Hi, everyone. I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the Grants Manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. Thank you for joining us to review information about the Ulster County Cultural Services and Promotion Fund. And today, if you're here today, you're listening in, and this is also being recorded, so you might be watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking the time to take in this information, and just know that there's a lot of technical assistance that's offered by Arts Mid-Hudson staff and our grants department. So if you have any questions about what you hear here today, don't hesitate to reach out to us, which I'm sure you'll hear me say many times. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the Grants Manager at Arts Mid-Hudson. I've been here since 2016 working on our grants programs. And Vanessa, our grants associate, has been working here over a year. And we're both available at grants@artsmidhudson.org or at our phone number 845-454-3222. You may be hearing from either one of us, and we're both, very well versed in this program and can offer you grant assistance as needed. So today we're here to talk about our Ulster County Cultural Service and Promotion Fund, its purpose, why it exists, and what it's trying to achieve, the important dates, information about the guidelines and the application form, and some tips for submitting an application for funding. I'll try to, throughout this presentation, provide some background information so you can really understand why we're asking for the portions that we're asking for, what you should be aiming for, and how to put in a competitive request for funding. In addition to this information session, we have Zoom Q&A sessions. There's an up-to-date schedule and a link to RSVP on our website at the same place where you'll find all information about the Ulster County Cultural Service and Promotion Fund. I'm going to go through a lot of the details of the program first, and then a little bit later in the info session, I will share my screen. We'll go to our website and I'll show you where to find everything, including the up-to-date list. I also have the list of Zoom sessions at the end of this presentation, but just always check the website. If we have to reschedule or if there's like a staff sickness and we need to move a Q&A for some reason, that's where we'll have the most up-to-date information. We also will send emails if you're RSVP'd. So I recommend just, RSVPing on the same place where you found all the information related to this program. And that way you'll get any updates as they become available and reminders about upcoming Q&As. This is also a really good way and formal setting to hear other people's questions. You can, of course, come with your own questions and be able to talk to us, but it's really good to hear other people's questions and have them ask something that you may not have thought of. We offer a ton of accommodations and assistance. If there are any specific accommodations that you need in order to submit a proposal, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. These may include translation services for grant assistance, large text documents, technical support related to the platforms we're using, anything like that. We also have one-on-one appointments available to discuss specific questions, brainstorm ideas, and receive feedback on a draft or budget. These are strongly recommended, especially for a really competitive program like this, to get some feedback and try to put your best possible application in. As you'll hear me say numerous times today, this is probably one of our more competitive programs due to the amount of funding that's available and just the high volume of really strong applications that we get every year, and the really strong showing of arts and cultural organizations in Ulster County. But that's why it's a really good thing to take advantage of this, so you can at least have a second set of eyes on it that's kind of hearing from other applicants as well, and kind of getting a sense of what the applicant pool might look like, so that we can, and our knowledge of previous applicant pools and what's been successful in the past, so we can help guide you in putting in a competitive ask. You can make appointments using our assistance appointment form. It's on our website with all the other Ulster County Cultural Service and Promotion Fund information. It's also a simple URL. It's just artsmidhudson.youcanbook.me, and you'll see the booking form there. It's also in the email signature of any email that you receive from grants@artsmidhudson.org. So if you sign up for the Q&As, for example, every time we send you a reminder that one is coming up, there'll be a link in the email signature to make a one-on-one appointment if you'd like. As I said, we offer free and varied assistance. It's really something, I would say, like the pride of our grants department is that we're able to offer such in-depth assistance to prospective applicants. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love talking to people. I personally find it really fun to talk to artists and arts workers and cultural workers about their ideas and help them put something in that's strategic and thoughtful. So you're not bothering us, even if it's the week of the deadline or a couple days before the deadline. There is no harm in reaching out and asking. We can help you put together, think strategically about project proposal. It's good for networking opportunities. We can hear what you're working on and maybe make some recommendations about who you might want to connect with or collaborate with. And then you can get helpful feedback about your grant proposal or about your budget, especially. I'll talk about the purpose of this program. So the funding is the Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion Fund, shortened often to UCCSPF, as you can imagine, because it's a long name. So if you see that hanging out somewhere, that's the acronym for it. But we try to use the full name as often as possible to avoid confusion. It is a funding resource dedicated to maintaining the artistic and cultural assets of Ulster County through capacity building initiatives and programmatic support. We are very, very grateful to our funders. Financial resources for this program have been made available by the Ulster County Legislature and are administered by us, Arts Mid-Hudson. The goals of the program. So our goals are to support nonprofit arts organizations in Ulster County in efforts to grow, expand, or improve their work, which are really the main focus of capacity building initiatives, which we'll talk about in depth later on. Positively impact the arts and cultural scene of Ulster County by strengthening established arts organizations that benefit residents and visitors. Support the incredible diversity of backgrounds, artistic mediums, and ways of presenting arts and cultural programming in Ulster County. And support activities that increase participation in the arts among residents and visitors, particularly for individuals from historically underrepresented communities. So in all, we're trying to strengthen the existing arts and cultural landscape in Ulster County by supporting existing organizations in their growth, supporting programming, and really honoring diversity of backgrounds, ways of working, artistic mediums, and through all of that, strengthening the existing organization so that there is a ripple effect into the community, and those that maybe don't often get to engage in arts or cultural programming or see themselves represented in arts and cultural programming have opportunities within the county close to their home to be able to experience that. Important dates, of course, the most important date is the deadline, which is Tuesday, July 22nd, about a month from today when we're recording the info session. The online submission process closes at 11:59 p.m. So very specifically, the deadline is Tuesday, July 22nd at 11:59 p.m. That's when the form will close. It will not allow any submissions after that time. If you try to press submit, honestly, within 5 minutes of that time, you might run into some issues. I really strongly recommend not submitting an application within the last 2 hours before this deadline. That is when the most glitches happen. I mean, I've even heard from people who say, there were like 5 hours before the deadline, they had trouble. And it's usually because there's a required field that they've missed. They've uploaded, there's a file missing. A file that they're trying to upload is very large and it's causing a glitch. It's preventing it from being submitted. Submittable might randomly be doing site maintenance at the time that we have happen to have our deadline. So for all of these reasons, I completely understand. You may be submitting on the day of the deadline. I would say 50% of our applications for the entire year come in on the day of the deadline. So there's no shame there, but just please try to avoid that last several hours because that's when all of the technical issues happen. I will always be checking email, but there's only so much I can really do in the evening, So that is the deadline. Please try to avoid last minute submissions. All funded initiatives must take place between September 1st of this year and August 31st of 2026. So now we're going to talk about how the review process works. All submitted proposals are reviewed using a peer panel evaluation process. Panelists include artists, arts workers, and community members, cultural workers, who evaluate and grant proposals and recommend a level of funding. There are new and returning panelists every year, but the majority are always, fresh for that year. We do sometimes like to have some returning people because they have knowledge about the process. It typically helps it go smoother and faster and more efficiently when we have some people in there who know what they're doing, kind of model good panel behavior and efficient panel practices to newcomers. Arts Mid-Hudson staff or board members do not have a vote in this process. We facilitate the process, but we do not have a vote. I really see myself simultaneously as an advocate for the applicant and an advocate for Arts Mid-Hudson. And our funder in the process. So of course, trying to encourage the panel to be generous in their review of each applicant, give people the benefit of the doubt, try to consider impact, try to consider their own biases that they might be bringing to their review, and also, advocate for the overall goals of the program and what we have been tasked by Ulster County to do with these funds, and ensure we're meeting our contractual obligations to the Ulster County Legislature. Panelists can request information on previously funded projects. So they might ask, has this been funded in the past? How do they do? And if they ask that, then we will provide that information to them based on the reporting that was submitted. Prior grant funding does not guarantee continued support, and receiving funding last year, for example, would not make you ineligible in any way, shape, or form. There are many applicants who receive funding year after year, but then, there can be an odd year out where maybe somebody who's been receiving funding pretty consistently because they put in exemplary proposals and they do great work. And then one year there's a random year where they don't receive funds. This goes back to our overall process where this panel is not the same group making the same funding recommendations every year. I think that is the most democratic process in order to have a variety of opinions and people at the decision-making table, while dealing with some, frankly, subjective subject matter where we need to determine which arts and cultural projects will be funded in a very strong applicant pool. Inevitably, every single year, it's an incredibly strong applicant pool, great ideas, great proposals in the mix, and often not enough funds to fund everybody at the level that they would like to fund. Okay, so now we're going to talk about capacity building initiatives. And these are the main focus of this grant program. About 70% of our funding must go towards capacity building initiatives. And so we have a real emphasis on those. And if you are weighing between, I have an idea for a capacity building initiative and I have an idea for programmatic support, if you were to chat with me, I would be more likely to steer you in the direction of a capacity building initiative, just because mathematically we have a lot more funding to give out for capacity building initiative. Your odds are better. We usually end up funding about 4 to 6 programs a year through this grant because it's just a small amount of funding, a small percentage of our available funding for programmatic support. That being said, we pretty much always fund programmatic support as well. There are some that get funded, but they're the absolute top scoring group. So anyway, let's go through talking about capacity building initiatives. Capacity building initiatives are intended to help nonprofit organizations, arts or cultural organizations work more effectively and better meet their mission. Initiatives may create a new area of work, develop new strategies, or enhance current programming in a significant manner. So what this means is we're looking for initiatives that are going to expand the capacity of what the organization is able to do, allow them to be better at meeting their mission, allow them to provide better services to residents and visitors. And in general, I will probably say this again, but I think it's helpful to think about it this way. Any kind of capacity building initiative you're considering, in order for it to be really competitive, I strongly recommend that there's a clear ripple effect into the community. Like you can look at, okay, so we're going to hire a administrative assistant. What does that mean for the organization as a whole? What does that mean for the services offered to the public? So we hire this person, that frees up time for another staff person who's now able to work on XYZ projects that are going to expand what they're able to do, or this administrative assistant that we hire is going to enable us to keep our space open more days a week. Whatever it might be, make a connection between, because this person got hired or this new piece of equipment got purchased or we did this strategic plan, that will mean ABC for the public, for residents, for visitors, because this is all taxpayer funds that we are funneling into arts and cultural organizations in Ulster County with the purpose of strengthening those existing organizations to enhance the quality of life, the economic impact, and the artistic impact that we're having in the county. Please note, applicants may submit one application to the Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion Fund. It may either be for capacity building or programmatic support. capacity building initiatives are priority for funding. Other key details, the funding amount is $2,500 to $7,500. There is no cash match required, meaning, if your full project budget is $7,500, you can ask for that. And the timeline, as we noted before, activities must take place between September 1st, 2025 and August 31st, 2026. That being said, if there's some planning that's already been taking place or there's some work that's already been done, that's fine. But especially when it comes to the budget, we cannot cover any expenses incurred or paid for outside of this funding period. So if you already spent money on the purchase that you needed to make for the capacity building initiative, this is not a reimbursement opportunity to reimburse that expense that you already incurred. The expenses must be incurred during the funding period. All arts and cultural organizations are eligible, working in all expressive artistic disciplines. This includes, but is not limited to, visual, performing, written, digital, traditional, or experimental mediums. Eligible applicants. So this is, one that we talk about a lot because many organizations might find themselves in a gray area related to some of our eligibility requirements. Other ones are a lot more straightforward. So first of all applicants must be a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization which identifies arts and/or cultural services as a primary activity in the organization's mission. This is really important. This is how we determine if you are an arts or cultural organization and are therefore eligible for these funds. If you're a nonprofit organization, but you do not list anything having to do with arts or cultural services in your mission statement, then the organization is not eligible. It's, it should be really clear. And for, 99% of our applicants over the years, it's been completely clear within their mission statement that arts or culture is a key component of what the services they're providing to the public and the mission they're trying to meet. It came up a couple times over the past few years where we receive mission statements on our application that are different than the mission statement on the website, meaning they added in a couple sentences having to do with arts or culture to, I'm assuming, fit the eligibility requirements. But then when we go to their website, those sentences are not there. I do not recommend doing that. It really backfired on those applicants. You should really be copying and pasting your existing mission statement with no edits into the application. And if you have any questions and you want to talk through, hey, I'm not sure if the language in our mission statement makes us eligible or not, it's a great thing for us to chat about one-on-one, or you can bring it to a Q&A session and we can discuss it there. Applicant organizations must be incorporated in Ulster County, have at least 3 years of programming history, and have a board of directors or other governing body that meets to determine policy. They may also have be located and have a permanent address in Ulster County. Either is fine. You'll see that in the guidelines. Must have a non-discrimination policy in place and may not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, religious belief, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, or disability. We will ask for proof of your non-discrimination policy. There's some requirements for that document, which you'll see on the application within the guidelines, but basically we need something that is board approved, and a board member needs to sign off on it and let us know that that's what you're submitting. If it's just included in your personnel policy, then you would just upload a copy of your personnel policy. Must be in adherence to the Nonprofit Revitalization Act of 2013, which has to do with a lot of general nonprofit best practice stuff that I would say most 99% of our applicants over the years are fully in adherence of. But if you have any questions, I recommend looking that up and taking a look. Who is ineligible for this program? Individuals are not eligible for capacity building initiatives. Public school districts and their components, meaning like supporting foundations, called, or like a PTA. Same thing for colleges or universities. Ineligible. Units of government agencies, libraries, and social service organizations are all ineligible to apply to this program. This is very specifically for arts and cultural organizations. Organizations or groups that have not submitted prior requisite reports on prior funded activities to Arts Mid-Hudson, meaning if you got funding from us for a program, whether through this program or another one of our funding opportunities, and you never submitted the final report or we're still missing reports, you would be ineligible basically until we receive any outstanding reports. Okay, so, we've talked kind of broadly about who's eligible and what capacity buildings or initiatives trying to achieve, but I'm sure especially if any of you are new to applying to a capacity building initiative program, kind of wondering like, what does that mean? What is a capacity building initiative? And so we have some examples and some tips to kind of guide you through a few of the common ones that we see. But I'll start off by saying capacity building initiatives are very broad. There's a lot of different types of capacity. This means a lot of different things to different organizations. Every organization has different needs. And so I really think through and, what has the greatest potential for impact? What would allow you to grow or better meet your mission or achieve something that you've been unable to achieve because you just didn't have the capacity to do so? So some of these may include doing strategic planning or board development, new or expanded staff positions at any level, hiring new staff or expanding the hours of existing staff, expanding their responsibilities, capital improvements, technology, website, or other equipment upgrades, audience or marketing plan development, planning around how you're going to reach out to new audiences, maybe a rebranding. We've funded a couple of those over the years. This is a duplicate, but really it should just say there, diversity, equity, accessibility, or inclusion training, or other types of professional development training for staff or board. And other activities which include improve the organization's ability to produce excellent arts and cultural programming for residents and visitors of Ulster County. A question that comes up a lot is some applicants are looking at, you have a few different things that would really expand your capacity, and you're looking at how to put them all into one proposal together. I would say sometimes that can really backfire if it looks like a laundry list of just stuff that you need and not necessarily a focused request around a specific initiative. When it's a list of a bunch of different stuff, then like say you're like, we need to hire a gallery sitter, but we also need a new projector and we need some new chairs and we need to do some website updates. That starts to sound like general operating support. It doesn't really sound like a focused capacity building initiative anymore. Alternatively, some of these could be combined. So you might say, we need to do a website upgrade, and we also need to do some professional development training for our staff to be able to work with that new website. So now you're combining two different things, but they're clearly connected. Or we need to hire a new staff person, which means we need to get them a new laptop. So we're going to include the laptop request in there. That would be acceptable. Some of these may include consultant fees, which is totally fine, especially around strategic planning, board development, any kind of training program, or around doing marketing or audience development, or around installing new equipment, making any kind of capital improvements or website upgrades. So consultant fees are totally fine, and I think we see kind of frequently with these programs. Okay. Inclusion through capacity building initiatives. So you can read our full diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility statement on our website, which we update periodically. But in general, we say that we're striving towards broad inclusion and true access to arts and cultural programming for all. That's what we're really trying to achieve through a lot of our funding programs. And, an investment in your organization to grow is an opportunity to be more inclusive by nature. Like if you're trying to grow or expand the services you provide to the public, better meet your mission. I think for most of those types of projects that you're looking at or initiatives that you're looking at, they would offer great opportunities to bring more people in and be offer more inclusive programming or services. And so they're wide-ranging. Capacity building initiatives are wide-ranging and present opportunities for an organization to be more inclusive. And we encourage thoughtful outreach to all groups in our region and efforts to seek input from as many points of view when undertaking capacity building initiatives. So what that means is thinking about the why you're doing this. What is it serving? What is the ripple effect into the community? And do you have any feedback from the people that you serve that supports this, or have you done any outreach to say you're putting together just a very straightforward example. You see an opportunity to grow your audience into the Spanish speaking population in Ulster County, and you want to do some audience development planning with a consultant around that. If that is where you're starting, input from that population that you're trying to reach is critical. And that offers an opportunity to seek input from many points of view and to apply that into your planning so that you're striving towards a greater inclusion as a part of that process and not just deciding on behalf of another group that maybe you're not a part of what they're looking for, what would be relevant to them. So I think take this as an opportunity to not just, of course, you need to think through what your needs are, but also think through what are your community's needs, what are the needs of people that you're not currently serving and that you could be serving. I'm going to go through a few slides now that have specific tips towards specific types of capacity building initiatives. So if you're considering a new or extended staff position, you're going to want to make, this is the why now. You just heard me talk about the why before, but a why now is a really good important thing to consider for any kind of funding request, making a case for why this will be impactful at this time, and kind of talking about the relevancy of what you're doing. So why is this important? Is this hire important to the organization now? What will it enable you to do now? Why are you set up well to support this new hire, et cetera? Consider how your constituents will benefit from this hire or how you might be able to expand your audience and improve services to the public. So first of all, new hires have, those type of requests have a lot going for you. First of all, it's going to make a huge impact on whoever is hired, obviously, right? So it's like job creation. That's great. We love to see that. We love to be able to support new positions in arts and culture. But of course, and I'll talk about this more in a couple bullet points from now, where this $2,500 to $7,500 is not going to sustain many new hires. So there needs to be additional funding plans, development plans, fundraising plans in order how you're going to get that person in place and cover the extent of their salary and how you're going to keep them on long term if that's the goal. But then also, what is the benefit of that hire to expand your services to the public, expand your audience? How will the public benefit because this person was hired, the organization? How will the job be posted? Some people or some organizations apply and know who the new hire will be. They've already gone through their selection process. Others don't. I would say either way, talking about how you made that available to the public, whether you already did it, like that you posted in all these places, you had this many finalists, you interviewed and you selected this person, or, this is the process we're going to undertake to find our new hire. This is what we're looking for, whatever it might be. Talk about what the new staff will accomplish. This is really important to talk about what are they specifically going to be doing, including a job description is great. If it's a brand new position or if it's an expanded position, what's the new job description? What was the old job description? And allowing the panel who reviews these to be able to compare. How will the position be sustained or is it a one-time consultancy? So talking about how, if this is a new hire, a new staff hire, how will they continue to have their position funded next year and the following? And for expanded staff hours, really be clear about what is the change now. What were they doing in the past, and how is this expansion? Were they going to be doing differently, or were they going to be doing in addition to what they've been doing so far? Include specifics about their new tasks and include their resume to show relevant experience. You'll see on the application that if this is the route you're going, this is one of the few types of proposals that we specifically ask, like, are you paying anyone as a result of this funding request? And if so, are they a new hire? Are they an existing staff person? Is it a one-time consultancy? And based on how you answer it, we'll ask some follow-up questions just so that we're really clear about how you're viewing this new hire or expanded staff hours, and you're prompted to give something like a resume, for example. For technology and equipment upgrades, which are also very common, you want to explain the organization and the staff's capacity to use and maintain the new technology or equipment. So if you're installing a new sound system, who is going to be responsible for maintaining that and knowing how to operate it on the staff? Is there going to be training that's going to be done? How much of the staff is going to be trained? Like being really clear around who's in charge of this stuff and who's going to make sure it's well maintained. It's a good moment to consider accessibility. If you're making new permanent technology or equipment upgrades, how can they encourage greater accessibility to the public? How can they offer more inclusion? Consider if you need a customized solution, which may be more costly, or identify an off-the-shelf alternative. So meaning, we want a new website and we're going to use a template from Squarespace, and that will, this is what we're planning to use, and it's going to be, pretty much serving our needs. Or, we really need a custom designed website for XYZ, and that's why we decided to go with this consultant and have a larger budget to be able to create a custom solution. Either way, clarity on why that approach is what you've chosen is helpful. It helps to communicate why, explaining why you're making the decisions that you're making. And not just what are they based on? Are they based on real needs? Even if it's anecdotal needs, we've had this reoccurring issue, and doing it this, structuring our upgrade this way will really enable us to directly address some of these very specific issues that we've had in the past, or areas of growth that we've identified. The benefit to the organization and the audience needs to be clearly defined, as we've talked about a couple times by now. What is the ripple effect that because the staff got new computers, what does that mean for the public? And in a lot of ways, actually, once you start brainstorming around that, a lot of things will come to mind that will immediately be improved by having a new piece of equipment. Benefit to the organization or audience. Just said that one. And then what is the lifespan of the new equipment? Having, it's important for you to be aware of what the lifespan of it. And there's no real technology or equipment, obviously, that is evergreen and will never have to be replaced again. But I think showing it just demonstrates your understanding of what you're wading into, and your knowledge about what you're going to be purchasing. If you are clear around, this is going to last us about 10 years, it's going to last us 5 years, whatever it might be. For marketing or outreach initiatives, I would also say, rebrands, audience development, marketing plans, whatever it might be. I recommend being thoughtful, research-based, and realistic. Having information about what your current numbers are in terms of audience served, where your audiences are coming from, what the demographic information about your audience is, information about your click rates on your emails, engagement on your social media, reliable head counts from events that you've had. All of that, all of those numbers are so valuable. It really stands out to panels when that information is front and center in a proposal, and you're referencing facts and data that about what you've been doing so far, and can then use that to set goals for yourself and say, if we're able to, we know our existing audience is about 10,000 people that are in our orbit. But we think with this really focused marketing and outreach plan that we're going to develop, we're going to be able to grow it by 20% or 10% or whatever it might be. And this is why, that type of stuff is really helpful to make your project very feasible to a panel and see that it's well supported. Demographic information that's based on your audience is 1,000 times more helpful to a panel than demographic information about a place. We see that a lot in applications where an applicant will just say, I'm in Kingston, and this is the demographic information of Kingston. That may be the case. You may be based there, and that is the demographic information of that place, but that does not necessarily mean that's the demographic information for your audience or reflective of the people that you're actually serving. So it actually kind of irks panelists sometimes when they see that, because it's not like you're applying to a national funding opportunity here where you really need to explain Ulster County. The people who are reviewing your applications will all live or work in Ulster County, be very familiar with the county. So I would instead talk about your audience. Use this funding as an opportunity to expand your current audience, hire individuals from the groups to which you're trying to reach out. So if you're, again, trying to reach out to the Spanish-speaking population in Ulster County as an example, I would really recommend working with professionals who are part of that community and can or have deep professional knowledge in reaching out to that specific community through marketing efforts or outreach, or doing a rebrand catered to a specific audience as needed. Seek input from individuals from historically underrepresented groups, as we've talked about earlier in the inclusion slide. Relevancy of programming to the audiences you're trying to reach. So if you're saying we really want to do an outreach and we know that this population exists and we don't know why they're not coming to our program, so we want to do a plan around how to reach this new audience, I think that's also going to really necessitate looking at your programming and figuring out, is the programming you're offering relevant to the community that you're trying to reach? And how can you, again, seek input from that population you're trying to reach to meet in the middle and make sure that your program is relevant to them and still part of your mission, what you're setting out to do, but is engaging to the audience that you're trying to pull in. Clearly explain your reasoning for various promotion tools. And I'll also throw in here that this is not, it's not appropriate to request funding for, your regular annual programming, marketing expenses. We have our summer series or our winter series, and we need, this is all the printing costs and ad costs associated with promoting all of these events that are going to happen. That's a programmatic support request. That's not a capacity building initiative. Capacity building initiative is more about promoting the organization, creating maybe some evergreen materials to promote the organization, or developing plans in general through your that will address how to improve your marketing, your outreach, and reach new audiences. Okay, the evaluative criteria for capacity building initiatives. So this is what the review panel will use to score the application you submit. We use the same evaluative criteria for pretty much all of our programs, but they can mean slightly different things based on the context of the what's eligible for that program. So for capacity building initiatives, first, artistic merit, the quality of the applicant organization's existent programming, track record, and the degree to which the proposed capacity building initiative will improve artistic quality. Impact, the capacity building initiative supports the applicant organization in better meeting its mission. The initiative is likely to make a positive impact on the arts and cultural scene in Ulster County, and the capacity building initiative directly benefits, involves, and seeks input from underserved audiences. Feasibility, the capacity building initiative has clearly defined activities, an achievable timeline, and a realistic budget. The applicant organization demonstrates the ability to successfully complete the initiative and meet reporting requirements. Panelists can also award 1 bonus point if they believe that the initiative is exemplary in any of the above criteria or in meeting the overall program goals. So all of that being said, what I've been telling people recently, and I've really seen this be the case in panels, is that, artistic merit can be somewhat, a lot of these are obviously quite subjective. Very little, you can't really it's difficult to objectively review arts and cultural activities. I think it can be more objective when we're looking at a capacity building initiative. Is it well supported? Is it likely to have a substantial impact? But I think there will always be some disagreement around the artistic merit of the activities or the impact, that the perceived impact that the initiative would have on the public. Feasibility, I think, is something that you can really hold on to and think through. If you're at least presenting a highly feasible proposal, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because then if they're looking at there's difference opinion around whether or not it's likely to be impactful, whether or not your programming is of high artistic merit or not, whatever that might mean to the review panel. If they can agree that it's feasible, then at least they're not saying, well, I don't know if it's feasible. And if there's problems with it being feasible, then they're more likely to decline it or to score it lower. So all of these are equally important, but I would really, focus in on feasibility as well, because that is kind of like a checkbox that has to be checked for any kind of competitive funding opportunity. That seems likely to happen in the way you're describing, and that you're going to be able to do it. For impact, again, what is the impact on your organization, the mission, and the people that you're trying to serve? And for artistic or cultural merit, I just want to also note, and I'll talk about the way our panels are structured in a little bit, but our panelists change every year for this reason, because it's a subjective process. We don't want the same people rendering the same decisions every year. And so they're not as much they're highly encouraged not to just consider what is of high quality artistic or cultural merit to them, but also what is the track record that's been established, what is the legacy, or if it's a newer organization, what are they doing that's cutting edge or like really inclusive, and thinking about what is the benefit to the public. Trying to take yourself as an individual and your own personal biases, dislikes, or likes, and instead thinking about what will be of artistic merit and impact to the community. Some other notes for what makes capacity building initiatives competitive. They're highly feasible, as I said, sustainable, likely to have an impact long term, and likely to be able to sustain the growth that you just described. You have clearly defined goals and a way to measure the success. Measuring success, again, goes back to what I was talking about before, that you know where you're at. You're taking the example of knowing where your audience is currently and setting a goal for how the initiative would expand your audience. That's demonstrating a measurable success, that there's a way to measure if you will have succeeded or not in your goal. Efforts which will increase access to arts and cultural programming, applications from organizations that have clearly defined history and commitment to thoughtfully serving historically underserved communities in Ulster County, and contributes positively to the arts and cultural offerings in Ulster County. Okay, now we're going to talk about programmatic support, which I will go through a little bit quicker, I think, just because it is less of a focus of this program, but it is eligible, of course, and we will be funding programmatic support requests this year. And I think there's quite a lot of factors within seeking funding for programming. So if you're thinking about programmatic support, I really recommend touching base with us because it's highly competitive, and because we can also kind of make sure, especially around feasibility, that all of what you're describing sounds feasible for our program. So the objective of this category is to provide support for arts and cultural programming throughout Ulster County that may have a measurable impact on tourism, engage local residents, and or contribute to the vibrant arts ecosystem in Ulster County. Applicants may submit one application, either for capacity building or for programmatic support. Capacity building initiatives are priority for funding. Key details. So the funding amount, the request can range from $1,000 to $5,000. There is no cash match required. Established nonprofit arts organizations or artistic programs and cultural organizations that have been in existence for 3 or more years and have a record of success are eligible and encouraged to apply for funding. What this means, and this I don't know if I went in depth on this on capacity building initiative, but 3 or more years, meaning maybe you've been a nonprofit for 10 years. Great. Maybe you were an unincorporated group for 2 years and you've been a nonprofit for 1 year. That would be eligible. Like you were presenting a festival as an unincorporated group for 2-3 years, and then now you're a new nonprofit that's only been in existence for maybe a couple months or for a year. That you would be eligible, because as long as you have been in existence or the program has been in existence for 3 years, you are eligible. If you have questions about this is a great thing to touch base with us about if you're like on the edge of, you're not sure if you're eligible based on how long you've existed. Individuals and unincorporated groups may apply with an eligible fiscal sponsor for programmatic support. The fiscal sponsor, we'll talk about that, but must meet all the same eligibility requirements as any nonprofit organization applying directly. Organizations working in all expressive artistic disciplines are eligible, including visual, performing, written, digital, traditional, and experimental mediums. Who is eligible? All applicants, again, must be a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization which identifies arts and or cultural services as a primary activity in the organization's mission. Applicant organization must be incorporated in Ulster County, have at least 3 years of programming history, and have a board of directors or other governing body that meets determined policy. You may also own a building in Ulster County. You'll see that reflected in the guidelines. Must have a non-discrimination policy in place and may not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, religious belief, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, or disability. We will ask for a non-discrimination policy that's detailed in our guidelines and on the application. We're asking for a board-approved document, either your personnel policy or something that's part of your bylaws or was approved in a board meeting as a non-discrimination policy for the organization. Must be in adherence to the Nonprofit Revitalization Act of 2013. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's basic nonprofit best practice stuff. I recommend taking a look at it if you haven't heard about it or really dove into it before. And again, individuals and unincorporated groups may apply with a fiscal sponsor which meets the above criteria. Direct applications from individuals or unincorporated groups will not be accepted, meaning you must apply with a fiscal sponsor. You cannot apply directly as an individual without a fiscal sponsor or as an unincorporated group without a fiscal sponsor. We strongly recommend that your fiscal sponsor be an arts or cultural organization. And if you are thinking of, there's a couple of groups that might apply with a town or with a non-arts organization because they've been doing it that way for enough time that it's it makes sense. I would just touch base with us if that is the case. If you haven't had a fiscal sponsor relationship before and you're starting a new one to apply to this program, I strongly recommend trying to find an arts or cultural organization. Applying with a fiscal sponsor. So if you, again, are an individual or an unincorporated group that's doing programming and you want to seek funding from the Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion Fund, you will need a nonprofit to serve as the fiscal sponsor, who is an arts or cultural organization. The nonprofit fiscal sponsor is the legal applicant. They are the legal applicant on the application. They would sign, if you are awarded funding, they would sign the contract with us. They would submit final reports, and they are ultimately responsible for the funds. They pass the funds along to you based on an agreement that you all come to, which we'll talk about in a second. But any questions on the application that are asking about the applicant, they are all having to do with the fiscal sponsor. It will ask you on the application if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, and then that will reveal some additional questions that will then show, will ask about who is being sponsored by the fiscal sponsor. Fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit organization that agrees to extend its nonprofit status to an individual artist or unincorporated group. The project must take place in Ulster County, and the sponsored individual group must be based in Ulster County. And of course, the fiscal sponsor must also be based in Ulster County because they have to meet all the same eligibility requirements as anyone else applying directly. Nonprofit organizations may submit an application directly and serve as a fiscal sponsor for one additional project. So we get this question a lot. If you're planning to apply yourself as an organization for a capacity building initiative and you get approached by a group and they want you to serve as a fiscal sponsor for a programmatic support request, you are totally eligible to do both. You can submit your direct application, your one direct application, and you could submit a fiscally sponsored request. You will include a letter of agreement on the application, which you can download from our website where everything else is. It's signed by the fiscal sponsor, the sponsored artist, or unincorporated group, and it's asking you to describe the arrangement, how the funds would pass from the fiscal sponsor to the group or individual to be able to execute the project. Ineligible applicants, so again, public school districts and their components, aka PTAs, colleges and universities and their supporting foundations, units of government agencies, libraries, and social service organizations are all ineligible for this funding program. This is very focused specifically on arts and cultural organizations and their programs. Don't worry about the second bullet. It's no longer in the guidelines. If you are incorporated in Ulster County or you have a legal address in Ulster County, you are eligible. Organization or groups that have not submitted the requisite reports on prior fund activities, Arts Mid-Hudson. If we're missing a file report from you, then you are ineligible until we receive that report. So what are some of the eligible programmatic support requests? These may include, but are not limited to, arts exhibitions, performances such as concerts or live theater, presentations such as film screenings or readings, arts or cultural festivals, and other unique experiences or interactive activities that are focused on arts and culture. We're thinking about, again, inclusive programming. So all Ulster County Cultural Service and Promotion Fund programmatic support funded programs must be open to the general public. We strive towards broad inclusion and true access to arts and cultural programming for all, and we encourage thoughtful outreach and efforts to seek input from all groups in our region, as well as specific outreach and inclusion efforts targeting underserved audiences. These are groups that may have limited access to art programs, cultural programs, services, or resources due to location, race, economic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, religion, disability, or other factors. So what we're saying here is that we really, these are, first of all, open to the public, but we strongly recommend trying to find ways to pull in audiences that aren't regularly engaging with your programs, especially if those are audiences that are part of typically underserved communities that don't have enough arts and cultural programs that reflect that specific group's point of view, or is highly inclusive in terms of accommodating and making the programming relevant to the group that you're trying to reach. Of course, any art form has appreciators and fans and people who want to attend arts or cultural experiences having to do with that from everyone from every single walk of life. But I would really encourage you to think about if there's a specific group that you know you could be reaching and exists within your community of people, of the public that you're serving, but they're not showing up to your programs as much as you would hope. Instead of jumping to let's decide for that group why they're not coming and what we have to do to try and to encourage them to come, talk to the group that you're trying to reach, get their input, understand what's relevant, understand how they could be invited in, how the programming could be more inclusive or accessible, and apply what you learn to your planning. And if that, if you haven't been able to go through a feedback process like that or a surveying process yet, describe what that process will look like as a part of your project plan for putting together this program. Priority will be given to activities that take place in locations that are fully compliant with the Americans Disability Act, Section 504. Priority may also be given to activities that include additional methods to make arts and culture accessible to audiences or plan for temporary measures necessary to make sites accessible. The ADA hotline for questions is 1-800-514-0301 for more information. There's also a lot of information online. And if you have any questions about this is a good thing to brainstorm with us as well. Expense priorities for programmatic support. So you might be familiar with this if you've applied to some of our other funding opportunities. We always prioritize artist fees for programmatic support. We are, I hear panelists say a lot, this application is very clear. I really like the project plan and the budget is all for paying artists. So it's perfect in my book. So that, paying, especially if it's unclear around how much artists are going to be paid, if artists are going to be paid, how much some artists will be paid, if some will be paid more or less than others. Artist fees are just such a focus of what we are trying to achieve with our programmatic support. So I think, it's great to ask for artist fees and then to be clear around how those are structured. Another priority is marketing expenses. That's how people hear about the programs that you're doing and how you're able to reach the public. So it's great to be asking for marketing expenses, or it's great also to be asking for a combination of these things, maybe a good percentage for artist fees and then some funding for marketing. Consumable art supplies and materials are also a priority for funding, and efforts to increase accessibility to arts programming, meaning, we need to rent a temporary ramp so that we can make our space ADA compliant. That would be an effort to increase accessibility and would be a priority for funding. Okay, now we'll talk through the evaluative criteria for programmatic support. So first, again, this is our review criteria that we use across all of our programs. They mean slightly different things based on the context of the program itself. Artistic merit, taking into consideration the project design, proposed artists and audience experience, and the organization's past activities. So this is one, and for all of these review criteria in our entire process, it's really important to us that the panels change every year. It's not the same group of people rendering the same decisions year after year. And that's because, especially for reviewing artistic or cultural merit, there's, not one prevailing opinion. There's not one objective opinion. And we really encourage our panelists to think through what, of course, they might consider what what they're interested in. It's natural for that to be a part of your thinking. This sounds really interesting to me. I would love to attend this. That often will go over well with panelists. But we're also asking them to think, who is the audience they're trying to reach? And is this likely to be impactful artistically or culturally for the group that they're trying to reach? Is this likely to offer a way to see a medium in our area that's underseen? Is the work of, outstanding merit, and that can be assessed in so many different ways. We're less interested overall in quantity of people reached and more about the quality of the experience that's provided. And so, artistic merit can have a lot to do with that when they're thinking around what's the potential there to offer something to the public that they may not get a chance to see otherwise. Impact, and this leads right into impact. The project is likely to make a positive impact on the arts and cultural scene in Ulster County. Project directly benefits residents, visitors, and includes groups who do not typically engage with arts or cultural programming. The project creates a new programming, fosters an emerging arts discipline, or increases opportunities for artists. So what's the impact on the artists involved, on the organization, and on the public? Is it likely to have the impact that the person who wrote this proposal is projecting it will have? And, you know, is it offering something that maybe otherwise without this funding would not be able to be experienced in Ulster County this year or next year? Feasibility. The project has clearly defined activities, an achievable timeline, and a realistic budget. The applicant organization demonstrates the ability to successfully complete the initiative and meet reporting requirements. So this is a really big one because there might be disagreement among panelists around impact, around artistic merit. But if people can generally agree that it's feasible and likely to happen in the way that you're describing, you've already done a lot to bring yourself up in terms of like the overall applicant pool. Because inevitably those where the panel says, well, I really think this could have amazing impact. And I think the artists involved are great, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it in the way that they're describing, then that's a big knock against an application. So I would, especially if, you know, you're thinking about, it's really important to think about evaluative criteria when you're writing any kind of funding request, because this is what the reviewers will literally be using to score your application. Feasibility is one that I think you can do a lot to ensure that you're presenting a highly feasible proposal. And, you know, you can make a strong case towards impact and artistic merit. I think if all of the who, what, when, where, why is in place for feasibility, that's going to be a great benefit to your proposal. Panelists may award 1 bonus point if they feel the project is exemplary in any of the above criteria or in meeting the overall goals for the program. Some thoughts for competitive programmatic support requests, then we'll do some final wrap-up stuff just generally about submitting an application, where to find stuff. 30% of the overall Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion funds are available for programmatic support, which makes it highly competitive. As I said at the beginning, we do usually 4 to 6 programmatic support requests each year, depending on how much funding we have available and what the applicant pool was like. It's again, going back to what's competitive, having a track record, a commitment of the organization to reach underserved audiences, and a thoughtful outreach and relevant programming to the group that you're trying to reach. So as an example that I use very often, because I think it's quick to understand, if you're saying we want to reach out to the Spanish-speaking population in Ulster County, it really should be backed up with a specific plan around how are you going to reach that audience actually, instead of just stating it as a kind of pie in the sky goal that's not supported by anything. So you're talking about reaching a population that prefers to communicate in Spanish. What is the communication plan in Spanish? You know, detailed. What is the marketing plan in Spanish? This again is, you know, it's when we're talking about here, it sounds like obvious, but I can't tell you how many applications I've seen where the sentence, we want to reach out to the Spanish-speaking population in whatever place, is just hanging out an application all alone with no supporting information whatsoever. And it becomes a distraction. It becomes something that a panel can kind of look at and say, you know, it kind of irked me when I saw that and I didn't see any plans behind it. It's, you know, saying that you want to reach a group that has you know, maybe doesn't see enough programming in our region that's specifically catered to them, and then not backing it up with a plan, and it's just kind of like a shiny object in the application that isn't backed up by anything. It's going to have the reverse effect that you might be hoping for unless it's well supported. Again, that leads right into strong marketing promotion plan. That's how the public is going to know that the event is happening and that they'll be able to attend. Ability to monitor and report on program goals, outcomes, and attendance. You know, that you have a plan in place to track what your impact is and contributes positively to the arts and cultural offerings of Ulster County. Okay, some tips about submitting an application. So again, the deadline is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. That is when the submission form will close. All of our submissions come in using our grants platform Submittable. I say our grants platform, but it is a platform that we pay a membership fee for. we use, but we don't. When you make an account with Submittable, your account is with Submittable. You could be applying to a number of funders through Submittable. It's not just our platform. And myself and Vanessa and our team, we have no access to your account on Submittable. So if there's something like I'm logged out or I can't remember my password, you definitely reach out to us for assistance if you really need assistance and you don't know where to start. But just know, if you are having trouble logging into your account, you're going to have to just reset your password with Submittable, for example. If you need to find a copy of your submission after you submit it, it will be saved within your account. I will jump over to our website in a second, and I think at the end at this point, I will just wait until we're done with all the slides here, and then I'm going to show you a couple things on our website. If you require any assistance in completing the form ahead of time, please contact us as soon as possible so that we can make sure we have adequate time to support you. The supplemental documents that you'll be asked for on the application, these are in the guidelines. You can take a look at the application. You'll see what's going to be asked of you there. We're asking for a staff list, board list, organization's annual budget for your most recent fiscal year, or a signed treasurer's report. You'll see that detailed in the guidelines if you need to offer that alternatively. You'll need to provide some nonprofit and financial documents based on the size of your organization financially, which may include a Chart 500, a 990 or 990 EZ, or whatever you file based on the size of your budget, and an independent public accountant's opinion or audit depending on the organization's gross annual revenue. So based on where you are, you'll need to provide these documents. Supplemental materials are highly recommended. It's really difficult to judge artistic or cultural merit, for example, if we don't have any supplemental materials to support that. So even for capacity building initiatives, providing some photo or video documentation of the programs that would be enhanced as a result of this, or your regular programs, maybe including an annual report document if you have it, those would go a long way to giving the panel a sense of what you're doing and what your existing work is like. All application material, all the links are available on our website. I'll jump over there in a moment. I want to give you some general application tips. And if you hop on a call with us or come to the Q&A, you'll hear a lot more of these type of things, and we can go more in depth on providing some specific tips based on your needs. But this is some stuff we end up telling everybody. So first of all, of course, answer the questions directly and succinctly. The reviewers will be reading a lot of applications. And so it's really important to provide information that is most pertinent quickly. Most important information first, hierarchy of information. I think it's really helpful to provide kind of like a summary paragraph for some of the questions that you'll see on the application to start. For example, the initiative or the project description, depending on whether you're applying for capacity building or programmatic support. Starting off those questions with a summary of the full scope of the initiative or the project, so that we're not reading and reading to get an idea of the full scope. We have the summary or the abstract at the beginning, and then every detail that follows kind of supports that overall initial, in a nutshell, of what you're doing. Provide specifics to understand the scope of the project and the depth of planning. So specific dates, specific people involved, specifics about your current audience. All of these things are really helpful in demonstrating the planning and the understanding you have in place right now to be able to execute what you're saying you'll do with these funds. Always recommend you want to write for someone who knows nothing about you or the project or your organization or the artist involved. Of course, there'll be some people on the panel who are very familiar with the organization, especially if you've been an arts organization or cultural organization in Ulster County for a long time. But inevitably, there's likely to be somebody who's less familiar with your programming or with your work on the panel, and you don't want to make assumptions about what they know. So you want to provide clear information, and not, if when you start making assumptions about what you know, it's very easy to leave out key details that are kind of critical to understand how you're going to execute the project or the initiative. This is a thing that's really good to ask for help on, because sometimes we don't know things are so obvious to us because we're in the weeds working on our stuff all day long, that you might be forgetting, oh, I never described the venue, I never described the place, and it's really actually difficult to understand the scope of this project if we don't have an understanding of where it's taking place, as an example. This is something that myself and Vanessa are really good at catching in draft review. So I strongly recommend draft review for this purpose, or just asking a trusted friend or colleague who maybe is less familiar with the project to read and say, what details were missing? What questions did you have when you read this? Show evidence of the evaluative criteria and reference, I'll blend that into the next one, which is reference the goals of the funding program, reference the guidelines. Our reviewers are going to use the guidelines and the evaluative criteria to prepare to read all the applications and make and do their scoring and make their funding recommendations. And so that's why speaking that language back to them is really helpful. It helps them make direct connections. It helps guide and organize your writing. So whenever I'm writing a grant application, I pull out the guidelines, I start highlighting stuff and circling things that I think are relevant to what I'm doing. And I try to then integrate that language into my descriptions so that anyone reading it and reviewing on the other end would say, oh, this clearly, relates to what we're trying to achieve with this program overall. And control the review discussion. And what that means is, again, not making assumptions about what they know, providing clear information about the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the project or initiative so that they are not getting distracted. This also has to do with submitting, putting in consistent information. You'll see on the application that there's going to ask you, it's going to ask you a few questions, and there's opportunities as you work on it. Maybe in your budget, you say for programmatic support, for example, we're going to sell and ask you how you'll raise additional funds for the project. You might talk about selling 100 tickets. Okay. Then elsewhere on the application, you say 200 people are going to attend. Then the panel, you have now lost control of the review discussion because the panel is saying, well, they say they're going to sell 100 tickets, but they say 200 people are coming. Do 100 people not have to buy tickets? That's not explained anywhere. Oh, wait, let me look here. No, it's not here either. Well, maybe they meant this. Now the panel's making assumptions and guessing and doing a little research into your writing to try to figure that out. And it's just a distraction. It's pulling them away from the talking about all the really good things about your proposal, and that you've lost control of the review discussion by giving them really focused information, by giving them unfocused information or inconsistent information. Some tips around the budget. We always recommend working on the budget and the narrative together, at least to check for the consistency I was just referencing. But I even more so recommend doing the budget first. I think a budget is a roadmap to the rest of an application. If you know what you're planning to spend the funds on, then you're doing a lot to explain. If you don't want to write a whole proposal and then get to the budget and say, well, I talked about all this other stuff, but I actually need the funding for this, and I didn't talk about it anywhere. And so now you have to kind of go back and do the work twice to make your narrative fit with the budget. If you're starting with the budget, I think you're saving yourself some time ultimately in terms of making them all cohesive together. Use the explanation column on the budget. You'll see on our budget table, and this is something great we can go over in a Q&A. I can pull up the budget. We can look at it together or in a one-on-one session. But you'll see it's going to ask you to explain any expenses you're including there. It's only asking you on the table how you will spend our funds. And so we're asking you to explain if you say $5,000 for artist fees, what do you mean by that? Is it 5 artists at $1,000 each? Is it 1 artist at $2,500 and 5 artists at $500? Why is one getting paid so much more than the other? Oh, one is a group of 20 performers and the rest are individual artists. Whatever it might be, use the explanation column to describe how you got to those numbers. Check the guidelines for allowable and non-fundable expenses. Double check the guidelines, especially in the non-fundable or ineligible expenses area, to make sure there's nothing on your budget that you're asking us to pay for that we cannot fund. A big one that comes up is food. We cannot fund food. Please don't ask us to fund food. And double check the guidelines to see anything else that might cause a red flag for you. Make sure your grant request is consistent and balanced. So meaning you say, the total project is going to cost us, this is for, let's say, a programmatic support. Our expenses are $10,000. We're expecting to sell $2,000 worth of tickets, and we have $3,000 in a combination of other grants and private donations, and so we need $5,000. That's presenting a balanced budget. If you were saying, we have $10,000 in expenses we're going to sell $5,000 worth of tickets and have all this funding coming in, additional funding coming in, but we still need $10,000. You're not presenting a balanced budget. You're not showing us then, where is the other funding going to be going towards. And then ask us to review a draft of your budget. That's something Vanessa and I can both check very quickly. Strongly encourage that you get some feedback on your budget. Don't ever hesitate to ask. Don't ever hesitate to drop it in our inbox the day of the deadline. If we have time to do it, we will do our best to help you, especially for this program. Some of our other funding programs that you all might be applying to, we might be inundated with requests, especially close to deadlines, and not be able to accommodate everybody. It's a little bit quieter for this program because a lot of you have been applying for years. Please, if you've been applying for years, don't just rely on that. I'm sure many of you are going to have been applying for years, won't talk to us, and there'll be a few of you that are going to put in successful proposals. And I love that. We encourage that. But it's always good, even if you've been doing it for a while now, to get some feedback, get a little, get a second set of eyes on it, and make sure that you are, putting yourself in the best position to receive funding this year. Final tips, and then I'll just show a couple things on our website. So if you need a fiscal sponsor, that would be the first step for sure. You need to get on their timeline and make sure that you get approval. If you want to brainstorm potential fiscal sponsors, make an appointment with us ASAP so we can do so. Review the online application form and the guidelines, read the guidelines. If you're able to, maybe print them out, use a highlighter, underline, really closely read them, make sure you're understanding the scope of the program and the application. I strongly recommend taking a look at the application itself as soon as possible, making your account unsubmittable. And with the application, I really recommend, you'll see when I jump over there for a minute, I'm going to show this example really quick. There are some questions on the application that they're called radio lists. They are a question that you select one. You can't select multiple options. You can only select, I am an individual applying with a fiscal sponsor, or I am a nonprofit applying directly. That question, I think it will actually ask, are you applying with a fiscal sponsor? Yes or no. If you say yes, it will reveal additional questions. If you say no, it's not going to ask you anything because you don't need to answer the fiscal sponsor questions. So I bring this up because as a first step in looking at the application, I recommend making your account so you can start your application and then just read through it. And any questions like that, where it's this or that, answer them, even if it's just a placeholder, so that if you're unsure, so that you can see the full scope of the application. All the questions that are hidden are revealed to you because you've at least answered those yes or no, this or that questions. Organize digital copies of all required attachments. I don't recommend waiting to start getting together your staff list, your board list, your financial documents. Get those together as soon as possible. Get them, converted into a PDF format so that they can be easily uploaded. And I would upload them to your application as soon as you have them. It's not the kind of thing you want to wait to do on the day of the deadline. That's all the technical glitches, actually, in my opinion, that I think they all go back to, for the most part, file uploads on the day of the deadline, whether it's clear that that's the issue or not. It often is the reason something's getting, when you're like, I'm pressing submit and it's not working. I don't understand why. Your internet speed may be slowed down. There's a lot of people trying to submit to the form all at once on the day of the deadline. It's just, this is the thing in particular I really recommend trying to do as soon as possible. Just get those files uploaded. If you need to delete one and replace it later, fine, but at least get like what you think will be the files uploaded as soon as possible. These are the dates for our Zoom Q&A sessions. I won't read them. I'll read them all off just in case anyone's using captions. June 27th at 1 p.m., July 1st at 11 a.m., July 7th at 2 p.m., July 11th at 11 a.m., July 15th at 4 p.m., July 18th at 11 a.m., and July 22nd, the day of the deadline, at 11 a.m. We like to do one of these on the day of the deadline to capture and have a place for people to come for those last minute questions all at once. Okay, and again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. Our Vanessa Capuccio-Bear is our amazing grants associate. Myself and Vanessa, we're both available to answer your questions at grants@artsmidhudson.org and at 845-454-3222. I will say email is always better to reach us. You can get a quicker response via email. If you call us and we're on another call with somebody, we got to get the voicemail, we got to play phone tag a little bit. So even if you want to speak on the phone, it might be nice to first just try to make an appointment. Then we'll certainly talk on the phone, or email us and we'll direct you to make an appointment. I'm going to leave this window for a moment and jump over to our website for a moment. So this is our website, artsmidhudson.org. I'm just going to show you where to find some stuff. So you'll go to grants and artist opportunities, and just hovering over it will reveal the menu below, and you'll click on grants and funding. This will bring you to a page with all of our grants opportunities annually, and you're actually going to need to scroll down just alphabetically with Ulster County. We're going to go down to the bottom. These are on hold programs. Jumpstart was a one-off program for 1 year. Orange County is not being offered at this time. So we're here, Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion Fund, and you'll click on Learn More. You can also get to it very directly. It's, from artsmidhudson.org, Ulster County Cultural Service Promotion Fund, with dashes in between. Here you'll see all of the key information, a link to the guidelines, a link to the application. This will be replaced after we upload the video to YouTube with a direct link to the YouTube video, the link to make an appointment with us, and then the list of Zoom Q&A sessions and a link to RSVP for the Q&A sessions. You can also click here to see previously funded projects if you want to get some ideas from that. And I'm going to go over to the application really quick and show you a couple things. So it'll always bring you to this preliminary information, and it's going to, this is a new look for submittable. I guess it's going to ask you to press submit, and then it's going to ask you to log in. I think this will just log in here. So if you don't have an account, where it just said log in, it's going to ask you to sign to create an account. And so you'll do that. And once you create an account, you don't have to work on it all at once. There'll be a draft save that you can come back to. It's always going to ask you to confirm your address for whatever reason. This is your address for your submittable account. So if there's, you'll see it's always going to be filled in because this is what you entered associated with your account itself. But if there are any changes, you can change it here. Click Save Address and Continue, and it'll bring you to the next page, which is the actual submission. Couple things I'll point out quickly here. Please read the help text. It's there for a reason. It's there because somebody in the past has had a confusion point with that question, and we want to offer some additional context. For example, legal name of applicant. This is the legal name of the nonprofit applying directly. If you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, that organization is the legal applicant, so you would enter them here. Do not enter in the name of an individual. This happens every year where the person filling it out types in their name. Please do not do that. It causes a lot of confusion. Just type in the name of the organization applying. Read the help text throughout to help, avoid little errors like that can cause some kind of administrative confusion. I want to these are some of those yes or no questions, and here's a really clear example of that. Are there any pending lawsuits against the applicant organization? If you say no, nothing happens. If you say yes, we say what? Please explain, what is the pending lawsuit against the organization? Right. So if you wait until the day of the deadline, you're filling this out frantically and you're trying to get in on time, and you left this one blank, for example, you're going to try and press submit, and then it's going to say there's a required field that you have to fill in. And when you fill it in, if it's a yes, now you have to write a response. So if you're doing that like 5 minutes before the deadline happens, you're going to be really unhappy because it's going to reveal some questions that is not just a quick thing you can input in. This is like kind of I don't know, very few people are going to be answering yes to this question. There are other ones here that could present, like if you're saying, yes, I'm applying as a fiscal sponsor for the first time, then a bunch of questions are popping up, and there's an attachment that pops up at the end for that letter of agreement that we talked about before. LLCs, I just want to note here, and LLCs are not eligible, as noted in the guidelines and before. LLC or for-profit corporations are not eligible for this. And so if you answer yes here, it's going to say stop, you are ineligible. So you'll see there's some other stuff like that. And then of course, this is a big one, answering if it's for a capacity building initiative or a programmatic support. If you waited to answer this until the day of the deadline, you thought you did what's just visible and you did the application. Once you click one of these, all the questions having to do with what you're actually applying for pop up. So, that's why, again, click on these questions to reveal the full scope of your application. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. You can reach myself and Vanessa Capuccio-Bear, our grants associate, grants@artsmidhudson.org, 845-454-3222. We truly appreciate the time that you took to listen to the information, this information session, and for the time that you'll take to put in an application. We know that it's a lot of work, and we really commend you on your commitment to arts and culture in Ulster County for the excellent work that you do. Your work has value, and we're hoping to be able to support you this year. And do not hesitate to reach out to us. I hope that you are sensing a welcoming demeanor, because we really want to encourage you to feel safe and supported when you come to us for assistance. Again, as I said earlier, it's one of my favorite parts of the job is getting to talk to artists, arts workers, culture bearers about their work and figure out how to think about it strategically and put in a strong proposal. And I think Vanessa really enjoys that as well. And we're just excited to talk to you. So don't hesitate to reach out, come to a Q&A, make a one-on-one appointment. Thank you for your time. And if any other questions come up, you know where to find us. Thank you so much.